Here's what you can look forward to on this episode of The Nice Guys on Business.
I think a lot of it's marketing. I mean, we're mindset coaches. And frankly, I mean, Jason might get mad at me for this. We made that up. Now, what we didn't make up was the fact that we do care about how people's minds are based on how they, because we believe that you can't really help someone, act differently until you help them think different. Right. And so we're less focused on behavior modification and more on how does someone think. And by the way, once we think differently, we're all for behavior modification.
The Nice Guys on Business podcast. They're going to need a bigger boat. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by TurnKey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
All right, Nice Guy community. It's said that an expert is made in about 10,000 hours. And if that statement is accurate, today's guest, Steve Scanlon, he is a mega expert in the one-on-one coaching space with 30,000 hours to his credit. He's also the founder and CEO of Rewire, a coaching and development company bringing the power of neuroscience to executive coaching, leadership, and people development. Now, as the co-host of the Insight Interviews podcast, he interviews experts along with his friend and partner, Jason Abel, and thought leaders about the lessons that they've learned on their road to success. Self-proclaimed neuroscience geek. Steve, welcome to the Nice Guys on Business podcast.
Doug, it's wonderful to be with you.
I'm happy after the couple days of scheduling, rescheduling, and now you're connected to me at your gym. So you got to tell me at least the 30-second backstory behind how you got to the gym to record a podcast interview.
Because the sequence of malfunctions on my normal technology was something to make a movie over in the last half an hour.
Understood.
Well, I have a great staff of people, and I was frantically calling them because I was looking forward to this. And so this is my way of going. This is my improvisation as best I can make it. But I was so looking forward to this thing that I wasn't going to miss it.
Does that mean you're no longer looking forward to it because you're in the gym?
No, I am. I just was going to. This is we all want to make points on it. Here, point number one. Go the distance and go to any length you can to make stuff happen, man. And so this is me going to the length to which I can to make this happen. And I'm actually really grateful for it.
And it goes appreciated and respected. And I very much am excited about the conversation, but I'm going to lead off with a conversation that you may not want to have just in the beginning. It's not gotcha journalism, but I'm going to pick up something that I read in your bio a long time ago. And it looks still to be true today. Are you ready?
I'm fire away.
All right. So you carry the perpetual quest for improvement on the golf course at every chance you get. Now, I don't know that there is an overlap, or maybe there is, between a hunter and a golfer, but I always pictured you as a hunter, not a golfer.
So how do you want me to reply to that?
Anyway, you just tell me what comes first to your brain when I say hunter, golfer. You pick which one.
Well, you mentioned my business partner, Jason. You could be thinking of him, and he is an avid hunter. I went with a friend one time and very legally and professionally and ethically shot one deer in my life, and that was plenty for me.
Plenty. I get it.
That's not my cup of tea.
I didn't confuse you and Jason. I knew that Jason was a hunter, but right there in the bio when it said outdoorsman, I guess, I'm this Jewish kid from Pikesville. I grew up, I'm almost 60 years old as of the recording of this. And, I've never shot a gun with the pointed towards the business end of anything other than a target. It's like, I don't know that I could bring an animal down. Even if I was starving, I would sooner become a vegetarian. And then when I saw outdoorsman on your bio, I'm like, I always thought that Steve was also a hunter. But then I read and I remember that you played golf. But you come across as a guy that is you're great Northwest. You live in Oregon, or at least you did at one point. And I always feel like Man, he probably is a hunter. He's just not, sometimes you have to be a little PC on your bio so that you don't turn off anybody. So I wasn't sure
Well,
exactly what direction.
if ever there was PC to be had, it's here in Oregon. You got to be careful with being a hunter in Oregon, right? There's some political correctness that probably has to happen there. Truth be told, I don't know if this falls under the category, Doug. I have been an avid fly fisherman for a long time.
I love that. And I think that might be our connection there.
There you go.
We're going to take it. Favorite fly in the world, number 12, elk hair caddis. You can almost take it anywhere in the world and it will work.
Okay, well, olive, brown, gray. what color caddis is that?
It's a tan caddis, and it is I would say a 12 or a 14 hook. If I'm going to be tying him, I will tie it as probably a 14 or maybe even a 16. I try to get it as small as I can so that I can confuse as many of the trout as I'm. Is the body olive colored, or is because around here the amount of caddis flies that fly on the rivers out here and with the hatches we have, I'd be using an olive colored caddis fly pattern in October, for example, but a very light brown one in springtime and summer. Light brown. If I can only pick one fly that I'm going to use for the rest of my life, I am going to take a light brown 12 caddis. That's it. And if I had a second choice, I would probably tie above that. I'd probably tie below that like a midge, like a small little, like a 24,
or a copper john, or even a prince nymph, a really small prince nymph, right?
So we've got the wrong show going on here. This is Fly Fishing with Doug and Steve. He
started this thing. He's interested in neuroscience. So far, we've talked about technology and fly fishing.
But
awesome.
But isn't the reality of every relationship that you've ever built, find the connection with the person that you're talking to, and no matter what you talk about after that, it makes so much more sense. And when you have a relationship with somebody about something you have in common.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I can't wait to get off the show so we can, I can invite you up here and we can fish the Deschutes River, which is a very technical river, but coming out here, there's some really big red-side trout out here.
Wow, that is now I'm assuming that a red side trout is different than brown or rainbow. Is it like a cutthroat?
It's a rainbow. It's a red side rainbow trout. Yeah, that's a rainbow species.
I had a chance just recently. I was up in Mammoth Lakes, California, because I live about maybe 5.5, 6 hours south of Yosemite. And I had never fly fished Yosemite, although I visited Yosemite last year, and I said, you know what, I'm going to come back by myself without my girlfriend because she would get bored completely with fly fishing. And I spent some time in Bishop, California, and then near Yosemite, and I went fly fishing. And the streams and the rivers in Northern California are completely different. I'm used to like the mountain streams that you get in Colorado. I don't know what Oregon fishing is all about, but it's a wide open, winding river that leads that comes from the headwater, obviously down to a lake or something below that, but it is just in the wide open, so you literally are in cow fields. I'm not sure I enjoyed that fly fishing as much as I do like the technical fishing when you have bushes and trees and everything else that are around you that you have to avoid.
Well, I grew up in New Mexico. So if you're in Colorado, or if you're talking about that, right, very similar experience, right? We had these, what I seem to think of now as like pretty small streams.
Yeah.
Compared to like the Deschutes River, which is up here, which is, quality water up here. It's massive. We don't have there's not a river in New Mexico the size of the Deschutes River. It's just huge.
You have to go, you drift, or you can't wade that, right?
You can, but dude, you don't know politics until you look at the guidebook for how to fish in Oregon. I mean, it's like a dictionary. So the bottom line is, in most fisheries in Oregon, if you're in a boat, you can't fish from the boat. So you can use a drift boat, drift down the river, but you have to step in and off the boat. And where I go fishing, half the one side of the river, the basically the west side of the river is all Native American reservation, which you can't touch. So between only being able to get off on one side and having to get out of the boat, you can't fish from the boat in the Deschutes River. It's just, you're like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of
crazy
rules.
I just thought there was a lot of rules just for what, heritage streams or rivers that you have to have barbless hooks. I thought that was just all. I never realized in the actual vehicle, or that you're going down the river, you can't step into some rivers you probably can't step into, but you can wade from the shore. There's probably a whole bunch.
Well, you
of
can
rules.
step into the river. You just can't. You can't fish. You can't like drift by some sort of hole and put your lure in the river while you're in the boat. You have to get out.
I'm curious what the reason is behind that. I would think that they'd want you to do that so you're not wrecking the land that's next to the river.
Yeah, but if you and I start talking about reasons why governments do things, that's going to turn into a whole different podcast, won't it, Doug?
All right. Well, let's talk about what do we want to talk about? Let's talk about your business. So, as I go over to your website, you have put together this huge team of people that do what they do for you. That's a lot different than a guy that's out there with his coaching umbrella. You are the coach to the coaches. So can you walk me through maybe that journey just a little bit? Because I've always loved coaching and doing what I do with my clients, but the idea of teaching other people how to do it, that becomes a whole new level, which is probably why you've done it for 30,000 hours.
Yeah. Well, just for clarity and for, I guess, clearing the record, I still do coach quite a bit. And so while I do a lot of coaching of coaches, I am still a coach, right? So I started in the executive coaching space, I don't know, I guess 25 years ago, just before the beginning of the new millennium. And I've been in it for a long time. For really the first handful of years in the space, I worked with an organization, wonderful organization. They're still really good friends of mine. But effectively, we didn't really take let's just call it a strong academic approach to this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. I mean, we were still helping a lot of people. I think that organization still helps a lot of people, and it's great. But when I think about 10 years into it, Doug, I started to really get interested in human change, like sincere, genuine, what we call sustainable, authentic change. I'm not saying that that's what the organization I worked with did, but a lot of times coaching is, hey, I'm going to tell you something you need to do and then hold you accountable to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, summarizes, unfortunately, a lot of coaching companies. And I think once you start getting into the science, and and I'm a fellow at the Institute of Coaching, and I've got certifications with the ICF and Neuro Leadership, and I just started to take a strong academic approach and wait, what is this field really all about? And there are some people like, as an example, Richard Boyatzis, Dr. Boyatzis, who I feel is a professor at Case Western University. This guy's been studying coaching since 1969.
Mm-hmm.
So while Marshall Goldsmith and even Tony Robbins, some of their monikers are the godfather of coaching, well, I would tell you Richard Boyatzis is the godfather of coaching.
Okay.
He's a research scientist. And it's just really cool to take an academic approach and also an artistic approach. I mean, it's still human beings. And so academia doesn't answer everything, but I think that's probably what got me also into teaching coaching as a discipline, is in part because of the academic road that I took with my clients and with my company towards what coaching is.
So academics and arts aside, as a potential client that would be looking at your services, they don't know unless you tell them. So how do you talk to somebody that is looking to hire a coach and trying to figure out, well, do they care? Do they care that there is some academics involved or art involved, or do they just want to be fixed?
Well, I think that's a brilliant question. And I would tell you that the number one quality and characteristic of a coach is the characteristic of discernment. And what I mean by that is even the question you just asked, I think it takes a good coach to actually even consider that that's the question that a person might be having. So if I'm talking to someone and I can tell that they don't give a rip what certifications I have, they just want to go from A to B, then I'm probably not going to mention all of that stuff. If we're talking to an enterprise-wide, organization like one that we deal with, and you've got HR departments and people who care about certifications, yeah, it becomes a big deal to know that every one of our coaches is certainly certified with the ICF. And many of them have a lot more certifications. That matters to some people and doesn't to others.
So those in our community will want to probably take a deeper dive into some of the stuff that Steve and Jason do. Jason Abel works with Steve at Rewire, and they also have a podcast called Insight Interviews. And I want to make sure that you get a link in the show notes to that. But Steve, I want to share an experience that I had with Jason, and this is going back probably 2 decades before we even had a relationship of helping you launch the podcast and then get on to producing the show as well. Jason was just always one of, and I'm hoping that you can translate this into, this is why Jason's such a great coach, or this is why Jason's such a great leader, because I got to know him so well he was in the mortgage business and probably did, I don't know, a half a dozen mortgages for me. And I probably referred him to, another 20 or 30 people through the years. He was just extremely empathetic, compassionate, had all of the soft skills that one would need to say, hey, this is actually a human being that I'm talking to. Is that the stuff that makes for a good coach, or does the certification and the art, or maybe that's part of the art, does the certification and qualifications, is that what makes for a good coach?
Oh, I think that's a really great question. I guess I would listen to that question. When you were asking it, I was thinking, for some reason, my mind, as I listened to you, because I was listening, but as I listened to you, I thought, I wonder if you go out and get an MD at Harvard and you become a, neurosurgeon, or you become a heart surgeon, or you just become a general practitioner as a doctor. Mm-hmm. Does your education make you a great doctor?
I mean, if I'm being asked that question, I would say partly, I think, but the other part, almost the more important part to me, is how do you relate to the people that are your patients or your clients or your customers or your whoever's or your team? It's almost like, to me, that's as or more. Well, you can't open up somebody's skull and work on their brain unless you have the certification. Nobody's going to hire you to do that. But in the coaching case, you don't have to necessarily have that certification, but you need those other skills in order to make somebody have somebody stay with you.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, I think you answered it, Doug. I don't think all the certifications and all the education, and I could tell you about other, whatevers that even I have or my coaches have. I think it helps get you on the playing field, but it is not probably like, I guess I would answer it in 2 ways. I would say, number one, I've met many people who have way more certifications than I do, who I think ostensibly are much smarter than I am. But when I spend even 2 minutes with them, I'm like, I don't think I'd want this person coaching me. Just there's like you said, a soft skill. And that's the one thing in all these certifications. And again, I hope I don't get in trouble with the ICF, but I think all these certifying bodies actually don't do a great job of coaching and training in the soft part of this, which you get empathy, understanding, discernment. These are soft skills. So I don't know that those are trained necessarily in the academics of coaching. We can point out that they exist, but I think in a lot of ways, that's something you acquire. It's something you develop in yourself. It's something that you already have, but the other way I would answer it is, it was Pablo Picasso who had this really great quote. He said, "We first must learn the rules like a pro so that we can later break them like an artist."
I agree with that. We don't purposely break the rules, but we know we very rarely follow any of the rules when it comes to doing what we do, whether it's as podcast producers, me as a salesperson. I break every rule, not purposely, not so that I could be purposely against the grain, but so many of the rules are stupid. I mean, personally, it's the way I think about it. It's like, who said that I can't reach out to somebody on a Saturday or Sunday? If I'm working and I feel like that's the time that I'm going to do it, they don't have to respond to me, but you can't get mad at me for reaching out to you on a Saturday or Sunday. I don't think you can, at least. And if you do, maybe you're not meant for
That's exactly. You're preaching you're singing my song. But look at Picasso. The reason it's funny that he said that is because clearly anyone that sees his work, if you know nothing about art, this guy's clearly breaking the rules. But it is understood, and I've delved into it enough because I like that saying, to know that guy knew a lot about value and chroma and color and composition, like a ton. You can't just start like that. You're not just making those things up. And they got really good because he knew the rules like a pro. So I would tell you that I think it's helpful to know the rules like a pro in coaching, but I think it takes a really great individual to have discernment and empathy and compassion to figure out what individuals need and how to hear them in the right way. And there's no one size fits all for that.
A couple times as people are looking to have their problems solved, or they want to, go beyond where they are right now, they're bringing in a coach, and oftentimes the issue is they're dealing with the wrong part of the problem. They're dealing with the analytical part of the problem instead of dealing with the emotional side of the problem. And it's easy to see sometimes why in podcasting, even my small view, my very small microcosm that I look at, sometimes I can see quite quickly that somebody has got to do some emotional work before they become a better interviewer, because I hear them in the interview, they're almost cowering as the interviewer, having this major imposter syndrome sitting across the table virtually from somebody that they have elevated to this level that I don't think the guest should be. The guest isn't saying I'm entitled to be elevated to this level. The host is elevating them to the level unbeknownst to the guest.
Right.
Do you find that you have to work equally on emotion than you do on the actual problem itself that people see as the problem?
Well, given the timing for the show and how much time we have left, I can't believe you asked me a deep question like that.
Damn it, Doug. We can go back to fly fishing if you want to, Steve.
Let me make sure I understand your question. Do I find that the emotional aspect of what we do is as important as maybe the logical or other aspects of what we do in order to help our clients achieve success in their own way? Is that what I'm hearing?
That is 100% clearly said, much better than I had taken 5 minutes to explain the question. You said it eloquently in 100 words or less. So yes.
Because you mentioned neuroscience at the beginning. Again, this is probably a deeper part of the pool than we want here at the ends of our show. But
why we got to end this?
I don't know. Look, the limbic.
Stop ending.
The limbic part of the brain, which is the part of the brain that includes like your hippocampus and your thalamus, and forget all that, right? It's generally where you emote. That's when people talk about the limbic part, they're talking about the emotional side. Now, the brain's highly integrated. It's much more than that, blah, blah, blah. The part of your brain where you use logic and language and reason is referred to as the neocortex or the prefrontal cortex. So you got these two parts of the brain, one where it uses logic and language and the other that uses emotions. It's largely understood in the neuroscientific community that the emotional side of the brain, it carries with it far more power. Mm-hmm. And by the way, infinitely more ability to affect change. This is what spawned the entire field of emotional intelligence. That field exists because they started to really understand that. I'll give you a great example. I go out and speak to groups all over the place, and you can ask a group of 100 people, how many people have heard and know that exercise, as an example, is good? And 100% of the people, we know this.
Right.
Great. Now, as I'll ask people as a show of hands, how many of you know that you should be exercising more than you're currently exercising? And 90% of the people raise their hand. So if you really get into why aren't you exercising, you're not exercising because you don't get it. Mm-hmm. You don't need another book to fill up your prefrontal cortex to understand, calorie consumption and or muscle development. We get it. You're probably not exercising because, one, I don't know who you are individually, but it wouldn't be uncommon to go, I'll tell you why, because of what it makes you feel like. Mm-hmm. And then also what it feels like to make a commitment like that, because you're going to have to sacrifice some of your own comfort. That doesn't feel good. Right. So I just tell people, I'll tell you the reason you're not exercising, because the couch feels better. It's just that simple.
Right.
But think of the word we're using, feeling, 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 feeling. You're not usually trying to talk somebody into something because it makes logical sense. We knew that long before, we got into this. So to answer your question, yes, it is. We're huge proponents and learners of emotional intelligence to try to understand how do we get to the parts of the brain and the parts of humanity that affect sustainable, authentic change. And oftentimes it's not because I just tell you, hey, dude, you need to do this. Because most of the time you already knew.
What's interesting about it is you set up kind of the next segment of this pretty nicely, because the people that usually have at least in my opinion, what I've seen through my experience, the people that have the greatest resistance to change, or the greatest resistance to, sorry, not change, but to getting in touch with their emotions, tend to be the egocentric leaders of many of the organizations that are out there. And those are the people ideally that I'm assuming that you are dealing with to coach them. How do you get them to realize this? Or are you only dealing with the part of the population that says, I know I'm a strong leader. I'm the leader that probably says more times than not, I don't care about the pain, just show me the baby. But we really need to get down to the emotional core of that. How do you get to the people that really need to be gotten to within an organization?
Well, first of all, if the individual that you're mentioning is like the ego-driven one that's got it all, I don't know. I don't particularly care for this terminology, but I'll throw it out there. I'll talk about coachability. That's probably not a coachable trait.
Right.
If you want to come into a coaching session and just tell me everything you know, and you're not willing to go, hey, there's a gap between where I am and where I'd like to be. If you don't identify anything, and a lot of people with ego have a hard time doing that, it's not likely you're our client anyway.
Okay.
Now I have had some times when some organizational leaders come in and go, man, you guys, you Rewire, you really need to help our people. And yeah, unfortunately, from time to time, I have to be the one that's calling the CEO going, well, I'd be happy to help your people, but I think you ought to practice what you're asking your people to go through.
Right.
And for the record, you keep using this word emotion, which is really close to the word feelings. And so one of the things that I've learned is, because even talking about it on this podcast, Doug, I mean, people, there's a certain feel and flavor to that, right? Like, oh man, I mean, is this just straight up counseling? Are we just going to talk about my feelings and emotions? So I think we've learned how to speak about it in a way where it makes it approachable to people, so that we're not getting in and talking about, their emotions. I mean, even that language, even though we are,
right.
I think how we approach it with people so that they can understand that, hey, you can feel foo-fooey all you want, but your limbic system rules your prefrontal cortex. And until you get in touch with that, you might not change in the way that you want to.
Well, I think I liken that to someone that is very, I'm just going to say very masculine, somebody that's got very masculine tendencies. That's a man through and through. He does not want to hear about the law of attraction. He wants to hear about putting, pedal to the metal or positive thinking and it's almost like they're the same things. They just have to be, you got to dish it up so that your client can hear it properly. I don't know, that at least that's how I hear it.
100%. And, seasons of life. I mean, you've had a season of your life probably when you needed to put the pedal to the metal and that's what you wanted and whatever. And that's fine. There's certainly organizations and entities that help people do that. We're probably more geared toward the individual that's got a fairly serious growth mindset and is willing to examine their own thinking and examine their own, mental processes so as to create authentic and sustainable change.
So if there's somebody in our audience that is, I'm going to help me help them. They are experiencing this symptom and they want to get it. You said something really, really well just a few moments ago. You said if there is somebody that wants to I can't remember how you said it. Anyway, somebody in my audience, what symptom are they experiencing right now so that they know, hey, this is something that I really feel like the group at Rewire can help me figure this part of my leadership out, or this part of my business out, or the part of my organization out, what would they be experiencing right now to say this? It's time for me to make some changes.
Well, as not positive as it might be, I would say there is a discontent in the growth mindset. And I'm not saying always it's like that, but here I am quoting different people here, but Albert Einstein said, you cannot solve problems with the same consciousness that created them.
Yeah.
Right. So it's people that it's not always a problem or a challenge. But if you really think about it, Doug, even if it's a goal, everyone likes the word goal. Well, all a goal is a gap, right? A gap between somewhere where you currently are and somewhere where you'd like to be. That can be expressed weekly, annually, however, a 10-year goal. Like there's somewhere I am and there's where I want to be. I think people, if they come in and go, man, I know every little thing I got to do and I know all the answers. Great. You don't need a coach. If there are people like that recognize, whoa, if I'm going to get to where I want to be, I'm going to search for people outside of my own consciousness that can help me by even asking questions that I didn't think to ask, or maybe see things that I just wasn't looking at. How does every great athlete figure this out? Right. Yep. And again, you can take any athlete. I guess if you're on a team, you need a coach, but even how about tennis players and track stars and golfers? These people don't need coaches, and yet they go out and find them. Why? They can't see 360 around them. If you want to be an elite athlete, you find someone who can help you see further around you than you know how to see.
Great point. Great point. You and Jason started the Inside Interviews, powered by Rewire, of course, probably 5 years, 234 episodes ago.
Yeah, it's a lot. I think it was 4 years ago.
That is a lot of episodes. You probably teach consistency in your coaching program, whatever the habit is. You need to consistently put it out there and make it happen.
10,000 hour rule.
Yeah, that's sure. For sure. Are you approaching, or do you feel like you still have miles to go before you approach your 10,000th hour in podcasting? Maybe not numerically, but more in just your feeling of, hey, when I open up this microphone, I know what I'm about to get into, and I know that I can go in the direction, whatever direction that it goes in. How do you feel about you in the podcasting space?
Oh, I thank you for the question. I guess I know that you would love a definitive answer. I think people that do it a lot, it's like anything else. I don't think I had a point in time conversion. Oh, on number 205 to 206, then I became an expert. I think we're always learning, always growing. What works, what doesn't. Am I a little more comfortable than I was? Sure, 100%. I'm not nearly as wigged out. Is this all going to be perfect or not? I think the technology exists that we're not live. We can edit stuff, and there's just so much about it that just I think has allowed us to become much more comfortable with it. And obviously, when we do that, I think your guests are more comfortable and it's more flowing and natural. And I think I am more like that. Do I think I'm dialed? Probably not. I think there's some ways to go. I still have some idiosyncratic ways about me that, from time to time people have to point out.
I listen to, guys like Johnny Carson or David Letterman or even Jay Leno as they're sitting behind the desk. And although they appear very comfortable in their interview skin, I've seen interviews by them. They feel like sometimes I can't believe I'm here. I don't know how I got here. I'm not really sure how I'm doing what I'm doing, but I'm doing it. Sometimes you just have to build that plane as you're flying it. Do you feel that way ever? Not just about your podcast, but about anything that professionally that you do?
Yeah, I think so. And I think when Malcolm Gladwell wrote about that 10,000 hour rule, I mean, the point is taken. You got to do something for a long time to become an expert at it. But I think one of who did he mention? The Beatles, right? Didn't they play around, or one of those bands played around Europe for 10,000 hours before they were able to whatever? But I think artists and scientists and people that are pros are perpetually going, no, how can I sharpen this? But I think to your point, I do think there's a point at which when you do it enough, you're a little bit more comfortable with it and at ease with it. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you, like, dude, I'm a pro now. Like, nah, I got a ways to go.
Well, I always think that the humility and the humble nature that you bring to not just you, but you and Jason, and I think I do the same thing. I just think that, I'm comfortable enough so I don't have to come prepared with, here's my 27 questions that I'm hoping that I'm going to ask, and God forbid I don't send the guests those questions because they're not going to be scripted for their answer. I tell everybody that's new as a client, would you go into a Starbucks and meet somebody or go to a networking meeting and take out of your pocket a bunch of questions that you're going to ask and say, could you study these for 5 minutes? I'll be right back. And I'd say, ask you all those questions. I just feel like, I don't know that I'm ever going to be done learning. At 1,550 or 60 episodes or whatever crazy number in 10 years since this coming February, I don't know that I'm ever going to be totally like, oh, well, I've got this on lock. I got the production thing on lock, but the interview side of things, I never know where an interview is going to go. I'm assuming you do the same thing.
Yeah, 100%. And, I would say one thing about, and I've noticed this about you guys and your podcast as well. If you want to start talking to me about coaching and mindset and some of the, neuroscience that we get into, you'll notice that I'm way more at ease. And even in we do it, but if you started talking to me about, I don't know, humpback whale reproduction, I'd get pretty nervous. Like, I don't know anything about that. That's just one of the things, like, even when we're interviewing, our questions have a tendency to not get outside the scope of what yes, we still ask questions that we don't know everything, but I think there's a lot more comfort to be had when you're asking me about podcasting. Well, partly because that's super comfortable for both of us. And so It's going to make for a way more palatable and easily understandable thing. But, God forbid we start talking about, I don't know, astrophysics or something else I can't even pronounce. I don't know. I don't even know how can openers work, man. Like, you don't.
I saw the SpaceX program. I saw the landing rocket. I don't know if you saw the rocket landing back in the grippy thing, whatever the landing with the launch pad. It landed back in that. I'm like, how the fuck did they do that? How did they get that rocket that has no wings or anything? I mean, it literally upright and did its thing. I couldn't ask any questions from any intelligence perspective. That's kind of when I slip into third grade curiosity and
just get on an airplane. And I've talked to so many pilots, and I can totally regurgitate what they say about lift and drag and low pressure and high pressure into a wing that looks like, I sound like I know what I'm doing, right? But if I really think about that, most of the time I'm like, what?
Right.
Like, this thing weighs thousands of tons and we're just sitting in the sky in it, big metal, like, so yeah, I don't know.
I always think it's amazing that I can get up, walk down the aisle, and go to the bathroom and not pee all over the seat in the toilet because I'm 35,000 feet up in the air, flying at 700 miles an hour, and there's no bumps up here. How the hell does that happen?
Yeah, they pull off some crazy stuff. So. All right. Well,
all right, enough of that. Okay, so ideally, I look at and I promise we'll bring this plane into a landing. I'm going to bring it back to business for just a second, and then we're gonna wrap up from there. But here's a couple of terms that I oftentimes will hear about coaching, and maybe you can help clarify this because this is the world that you're in. I've heard people called life coaches, executive coaches, high performance coaches, and then just a regular old vanilla coach. Are there differences in your opinion for how those things are categorized or certified? Maybe there's certifications on each one. And are any of those really important other than I help, make people happy, or I help people attain a level of success or human nature or whatever that they wouldn't have reached before? What's important about coaching titles that we need to know?
Well, first of all, that you become aware that they exist is one important. And two, you're just you asking the question shows your curiosity. And I think if people got curious, I think they would get some of their answers. Generally speaking, Doug, it is a largely unregulated industry, right? I can't wake up tomorrow and go, hey, I want to be a dentist and just throw up a sign because you can't do that in America. But if you want to be a coach, guess what? You are one. And so the end. Now that might change, and maybe some states are thinking about that and falling under certain purviews of governments. I don't know, but there is no regulation or really licensing. There are certifications for certain things, And I would think it is a matter of focus. If you call yourself a life coach, you're probably focusing on maybe a more holistic aspect of things. But you only mentioned a few of them. How about ontologic coaching?
No idea
We're
what that is.
mindset coaching. Well, it's the ontology is the study of being, right? And so I'm just saying it's mostly if you really want to know the truth, because you and I are about the truth, right? It's marketing.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
But there are probably some people who, I'm a leadership coach, and they probably have a background in leadership and certain things, and they might have even gotten certifications in leadership coaching. And I think that's legit. But other than that, I think a lot of it's marketing. I mean, we're mindset coaches. And frankly, Jason might get mad at me for this. We made that up. Now, what we didn't make up was the fact that we do care about how people's minds are based on how because we believe that you can't really help someone, act differently until you help them think different. Right. And so we're less focused on behavior modification and more on how does someone think. And by the way, once we think differently, we're all for behavior modification. But a lot of times it's mostly a moniker. I would say it's largely marketing, but I would also suggest that they're probably with some of the professionals out there, there's a real legitimate reason why they're using those terms.
Is there a book in your future? Have you already written a book that I don't know about? Maybe you've mentioned
I've written 3 books and published 2.
Okay.
The one that didn't get published called Small Picture Thinking. Don't look it up. You won't find it. I wrote a book.
It's funny you led with that one, though. That's the one you led with.
Well, I don't even think my own team knows I have that one. But I published a book at the old company called Reality and Hope, Thoughts from a Coach's Chair. That's on Amazon. And I published, while I owned Rewire, a book called Still the Lizard, about the reptilian brain and how protecting our survival kind of gets in our own way sometimes. And that's called Still the Lizard. And both those are on Amazon. As far as writing one in the future, I threaten that a lot. It's maybe not my greatest skill. And it's, for me personally, it's very painful. Partly because it's not my greatest skill. And so I might. And if I do, I don't know, maybe I'll just use AI. AI is getting to a point where I can just have a thought, think it for another hour, and maybe AI will write a book for me. I don't know. That's
true. I'm thinking about turning one of maybe 900 or 1,000 of these 1,500 episodes into a book of great conversations with great people. I just haven't figured out. If somebody would just corral the information for me and do it, that would be great. I'll even give you 50% of the profits, and I'll give you all the promotional credit as well.
Doug, you're awesome.
It could happen. For those in our community that are interested in getting more information about what Steve does and how he does it, I'll make sure I put a link in the show notes to get to Rewire. Certainly, you want to take a moment and listen to the Insight interviews. I'll put a link in the show notes for that as well. And finally, if you do want to get a chance to go down the river with Steve, we'll put his email address in the. No, we won't do that. But I
thought you were going to put my physical address in West Lynn, Oregon. Like, dang, dude, you're really serious about it.
We'll really do this. Yeah,
that's right.
We've got to go. I've been fly fishing literally once in the last 5 years because. Or probably twice in the last 5 years, Snake River and the Owens River in Northern California. And I'm so used to the East Coast small streams that there are none that are right here. I want to get back to them somehow.
Totally get it. Let's go.
I think that is that's an invitation that's worth taking each other up on. It is an invitation,
Doug.
Do we have to go camping though, or can we actually do that and stay in a hotel?
Dude, whatever you want, man. We'll take care of you.
All right. Hey, Nice Guy community, never underestimate the value of nice. Again, specialist thanks to Steve Scanlon. All of his information, including access to his podcast and his website, right there in the show notes. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Seriously, it'll only hurt for a minute. And don't worry, I'll be fine.